Good morning, children. Today we will study about the Consumer Protection Act 1986, which is also called CPA. This Consumer Protection Act was set up to protect and promote consumer interest through a speedy and expensive redressal of grievances. So whatever grievance is there of the of the consumers, those grievances can be redressed, can be complained through a law called Consumer Protection Act. And through the Protection Act CPA 1986, speedy and inexpensive redressal of the grievances can be done. Now, Consumer Protection Act also recognizes the consumer rights. So whatever consumer rights are there, we will study that there are 6 consumer rights, and these 6 consumer rights are also recognized by the consumers. Now, for this redressal of the grievances, redressal agencies were set up. So 3-tier agencies were set up for the consumer grievances. What was the scope of the act? First, Consumer Protection Act is applicable to all types of undertaking, or whether it is a large scale company or a small scale company. Everywhere Consumer Protection Act is applicable. Then Consumer Protection Act is also applicable to the private, public and cooperative sector. It is also applicable to the manufacturer or trader, and the Consumer Protection Act is also applicable to the firm supplying goods as well as services. Now, what is the meaning of the consumer? The consumer means any person who buys any goods for a consideration. So, any person who is buying any type of goods for any type of consideration is basically called the consumer. It includes any user of such goods with the approval of the buyer. So any user is using the goods by approving it from the buyer, then he will be called as a consumer. But it does not include a person who obtain goods for resale or any commercial purpose. So in consumer, if anyone is buying the goods for resale or for any commercial purpose, then he will not be termed as the consumer. Goods should be used for the final consumption. Now, consumer also means any person who avails any service for the consideration. So consumer is a person who avails any type of service for a consideration. It includes any beneficiary of such services, but it does not include a person who avails such service for any commercial purpose. So if anyone is using the service for the commercial purpose, then he will not be termed as the consumer. But if any person is availing the service for a consideration, then he will be termed as a consumer. Now, what are the rights provided by the law to the consumer? The Consumer Protection Act 1986 has provided 6 rights to the consumers, and these rights are as follows. The first right is right to safety. Consumer has the right to be protected against product and services which are hazardous to health and life. So if any manufacturer is producing a product or services which are hazardous to the health and life of the consumer, then according to the law, according to the Right to Safety Act, a consumer has the right to be protected. Now the second right under the Consumer Protection Act 1986 is right to be informed. Consumer has right to have complete information about the product before buying. So before buying, the consumer has the full right to have a complete information about the product. That is why all the consumer has to print the manufacturer date, then price of the product, quality of the product, expiry date, ingredients and other information on the packets of the product, so that before buying the consumer can read the complete information about the product and then buy. This is the right to be informed. Now the third right is the right to choose. Consumer has the right to choose any product out of available product as per his own decision making. So the consumer should be free to choose any product out of a large number of available products according to his own decision. No one can pressurize him to buy a particular product. This is the right to choose. The fourth right is a right to be heard. Consumer has the right to file a complaint to be heard in case of dissatisfaction with the goods or services. So if the consumer is not satisfied with the goods or service, he has the full right to file a complaint, and that complaint is to be heard. If a consumer is dissatisfied with the product, and for that the company have to make a grievance cell also. If not, the government has already made the grievance cell, which we will study later in this chapter. The fifth right is right to seek redressal. Consumer has the right to get relief in case of product or services fall short of his expectation or is dangerous. So if a product is dangerous, or if the product or service is not up to the expectation of the consumers, then the consumer has the right to get the relief. He may be provided with replacement, removal or defect or compensation for any loss. So the manufacturer has to replace the product or remove the defect in the product or compensate for any type of loss to the consumers. Various redressal forums are also set up by the government at the national and state level, which we will study later in this chapter. And the sixth right is right to consumer education. Consumer has the right to acquire knowledge and to be well informed throughout his life. So consumer has full right. The law has given him the full right to acquire the knowledge and to be well informed about the product throughout the life. He should be made aware of his rights and reliefs available to him in case of product or service falls short of his expectation. So a consumer has the full right, and he should be made aware of his rights and reliefs which is available by the law in case of the product or services which has fallen short of his expectation. So if any product or services is not up to his expectation, he has the full right to get the relief. The government of India has introduced consumer education in the school curriculum and is making use of media to make consumer aware of this right. So government is also taking many positive steps for this, and that is why the government has included consumer education in the school level, and also through the media it is making the consumer aware about their rights. Now what are the responsibilities of the consumers? There are certain responsibilities of the consumer also. The first responsibility of the consumer is ask for cash memo. On purchase of goods or services, the consumers should always ask for a cash memo, because this would serve as a proof of the purchase made. Then the second responsibility of the consumer is be aware. The consumer should be aware about various goods and services available in the market so that an intelligent and wise choice can be made. So to make the intelligent and wise choice, the consumer should have the knowledge about the various goods and services which is available in the market. The third responsibility of the consumer is buy only standardized goods. As the standardized goods provides the quality assurance, therefore it is the responsibility of the consumer to buy only ISI mark goods of electric or electrical goods should be ISI mark. ISI mark is a standard product. Then if a consumer is buying the fruit product, he should see the FPO mark. If a consumer is buying jewelry, he should see the hallmark. All these proves that the goods is standardized. The fourth responsibility of the consumer is follow manufacturer's instructions. Consumer should learn about the risk associated with the product and services and use the product safely. So on every product, safety measures are written. The consumer should read those safety measures at the time of using the product or services. Then the fifth is read labels carefully. The consumer, it is the responsibility of the consumer to read the labels carefully so as to have information about the product, price, net weight, manufacturing and expiry date. So the consumer should read all the information about the product which is given on the packet of the product. The sixth responsibility of the consumer is assert yourself. The consumer should assert himself to ensure that you get the fair deal. So consumer should always assert himself to get a fair deal. Now the seventh responsibility of the consumer is be honest in your dealing. The consumer should be honest in his dealing and choose only from legal goods and services, and the consumer should always discourage unscrupulous practices like black marketing, hoarding and other things. So all these things should be done by the consumer and he should be honest at the time of dealing. The seventh responsibility of the consumer is, eighth responsibility, file a complaint in an appropriate consumer forum. In case of shortcoming in the quality of the goods purchased or services availed, the consumer should not fail to take any action even when the amount involved is very, very small. So if the quality of the good is not good at the time of purchasing or the services is not good, then the consumer should file a complaint even if the amount is very, very less. The ninth responsibility of the consumer is form consumer societies. The consumer should form consumer societies which would play an active role in educating the consumers and safeguarding his interest. So to educate the consumers and to safeguard the interest of the consumer should form the consumer societies. And the last responsibility of the consumer is avoid waste, littering and contribution to the pollution. So the consumer should respect the environment and they should not waste the product, litter the product here and there, and they should also help to control the pollution. So all these are the responsibilities of the consumers. Today only this much. Thank you.